Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. Today I'm going to be doing a reaction vlog for season 2 of Bridgerton. So it's Friday, Bridgerton just dropped early this morning, and I'm going to be watching it anyway for a podcast episode on Chapter 3 Podcast that I co-host with Izzy from Happy For Now and Leanna over at Leanna's Library, so keep an eye out for that episode. But I thought it would be fun to actually vlog my reactions in real time as I'm watching these episodes. So I'm about to watch episode 1. I definitely understand some of the critiques that there have been of the show, and we can get into some of that a little bit later, but I also really enjoy a lot of things about the books. There's some issues I have with them, but a lot of things about the books. Season 1 was just gorgeous. There were a lot of things I loved about it, and I'm very anxious to see how season 2 is gonna go. So far, the things I'm hearing are good, so I'm excited. Let me show you the snack lineup I have for watching purposes. It is Bridgerton, so we're gonna be fancier than usual. I've got some smoked salmon on toast and fruit and some white wine. I don't normally drink this early in the day, but I feel like watching Bridgerton and vlogging warrants it. Okay, I just finished episode 1 and I love this show so much. So much more than I think I was even remembering. It just makes me happy. Visually, it's stunning. The costumes are gorgeous, and there are just so many things I love about it. I love the fact that it's got interesting, fully fleshed out characters. Eloise is always one of my favorite characters, and I love her friendship with Penelope. It's just so beautiful to see that kind of a friendship on screen. But then we have other kinds of friendships, like between Lady Bridgerton and Lady Danbury, who are excellent characters. I love the fact that this show has fully fleshed out roles for older women as well. That's not something you get a lot of in Hollywood. And there's these fabulous roles for older women who get to also wear these gorgeous, gorgeous dresses, including putting Black women in these stunning dresses. It's great. It's really great. As far as the new characters, right? It's interesting. It's definitely taking a departure from the book, which is an interesting choice. I adore Kate. Kate and Antony's dynamic on screen is gold. Like, the banter is so good, and I'm really excited to see where the rest of the season is going to go. One thing that is so interesting about this is a few things that are different from the book. One is that Edwina seems like she's going to actually be into Antony, which in the book that isn't really the case. He kind of courts her, but like it's kind of tepid, and it's really him and Kate that have chemistry, whereas I think there's going to be a little bit more of like a love triangle in this one where between both sisters, which should make for an interesting dynamic because they also have this wonderful sister relationship. The other thing that's quite different about this is the backstory of Kate and Edwina. And I actually like the fact that they're making some changes, because one of the criticisms or like concerns that I had heard on social media leading up to season 2 was that they were just sort of shoehorning in these South Asian actresses into a role that was really written about white characters in the original book, and that it wouldn't be any kind of decent representation. And I think that's a concern that people had about the treatment of Black characters in season 1. That said, I obviously, like, I'm gonna be curious to hear what some of the discourse is, but I do think there is a real attempt to change things in the backstory that they have for these women. One of the things about it is that Edwina and Kate are not biologically full sisters, they're half sisters, because their mother had run off with a tradesman, a clerk, and they had kind of eloped and run off to India together. And the reason they're now back in England is that her grandparents stipulated that Edwina, their biological granddaughter, because Kate was not, Kate was from a previous relationship of her father's, but that Edwina has to marry an English nobleman in order to like get money or have their family be funded, and they don't really have money, and so they're trying to interfere with that. So that's interesting. There's also been a couple of small nods to their South Asian heritage, like Kate talking to Lady Danbury and talking about how she hates British tea, but she taught her sister how to make a proper cup of it, and she'll drink it because she wants the best for her sister, even though she thinks British tea is terrible, which again is a nod to like her Indian heritage and having grown up in India. So while this is a different world where colonization didn't happen in the same ways, or maybe we're glossing over some of it, it and, you know, like some things are different, there does seem to be a concerted effort on the part of the writers to seriously integrate some of that heritage into the characterization, which I appreciate. The actresses they picked for Kate, for Edwina, and for their mom are all just gorgeous, stunning on screen, and are just so incredibly talented. Kate and Edwina, like, they have a great dynamic together. They're very, very different. Edwina is super sweet. You just want to take care of her and protect her. Kate is a badass and will speak up against stuff, and I love it. This show just is making me so happy. It is a pleasure to watch, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen. It's building all of this tension, and it was such a great moment too, where Anthony was talking to Edwina and they were vibing. He was like, yeah, she's awesome. Like, there might be something here. She's the woman I'm gonna marry. And then she says, oh, you could talk to my sister Kate. You're gonna need her approval. And then he sees her and it's that, oh shit moment. Like, great. The one woman who I have pissed off not knowing she would end up being integral to my plans. And Kate is not having it. Antony's going after her sister and she's like, no thank you, no sir, you are not good enough for my sister. Which that part does happen in the book, but I don't think that Edwina is as into him as I feel like she's going to be in the show. So very excited with the direction it's taking, curious to see how it's going to go. Everybody's acting is excellent. The costumes are over the top and colorful and gorgeous. Penelope as Lady Whistledown is fabulous, and I'm really enjoying seeing her dynamic with Eloise, as Eloise has now come out and wants nothing to do with being out in society, and like literal laugh out loud moments for me throughout the show. I just love it, and I love their friendship together and her being a little entrepreneur and trying to decide if she's going to take that money and help support her pretty awful family members or just kind of like let them be and hope that the new Lord Featherington, the heir to her father, will take care of them instead. So first thoughts are I loved it. The dynamic between Kate and Antony is one of my favorite dynamics in a romance, and I think they are both playing it off to perfection. So I am very excited to see the rest of the season and see where it's going to go. And I strongly suspect that I'm going to like this season even better than I did season 1. I really enjoyed season 1, did have some quibbles, but so far we're off to a very strong start. I just finished episode 2, so let's talk about my thoughts. Continuing to just have a really fun time watching this show. I feel like the humor, the friendship, the banter, the drama, all of it so works for me. I don't know if I said this about episode 1, but one of my favorite things about the show and about the books as well is the Bridgerton family dynamics. That is one of the things that consistently I have loved in the Bridgerton books, even when I haven't always loved the romances as well. And I think they're doing a really great job of replicating that in the show. The sibling interactions are always fantastic, and Lady Bridgerton is just wonderful. And it's especially interesting in this season watching her and Antony interact because she wants a love match for him and she knows that he's really determined not to have it, but is pushing him in that direction and is hoping that he'll learn. Because she had a love match, she wants that for all of her children, and even though she knows it's his duty to get married, she's hoping that something will begin to change. Antony has been very determined and very underhanded in his work to get access to Edwina and to get her affections despite Kate's pushing back against it. And I think by the end of this episode, we're seeing that he has in fact sort of won. Edwina's interested in him. He's kind of winning in his fight against Kate. But you have to wonder, right? Is it actually Edwina he's into? Or is he more into the competition with Kate to try to get Edwina for his own? That's really the question. Edwina sort of meets his standards for the perfection that he thinks he has to have in a wife. And so that's really what's driving this whole thing for him. And as much as she's a really lovely person and she seems to really like him, I wouldn't say that he feels any passion for her. Any passion he's showing towards her is really about the competition with Kate, where he's trying to push past Kate to get to Edwina, and that's where any of this sort of like passionate, try-hard behavior is coming from. Will Mondrich is also back in this season, which is interesting. He is an addition to the show that didn't exist in the book. In season 1, we meet him and his wife because he's a boxer and that's how he's trying to make an income, but we know that it doesn't have a lot of longevity. So now he's back having opened a gentleman's club, which is pretty interesting. He's trying to get that off the ground. There is some question as to whether it's all legit or not. He has a conversation with one of the Bridgerton brothers where he's like, wow, I'm so proud of how your hard, honest work is making this happen. And he has a look on his face that makes me think, okay, that's probably not how he's making this happen. So what is actually going on there? I don't know. Eloise is determined to unmask Lady Whistledown, and so she is continuing to do whatever she can to figure it out. She has tracked down the printer that Penelope uses, and Penelope's freaking out, trying to find ways to keep this from being an issue. And when Eloise goes to the printer, I thought it was interesting. She has this interaction with a guy who's like maybe a delivery boy, and you know, he kind of like gives as good as he gets in some ways, which is interesting. So I'm curious to see if they're gonna play with that at all, if she's gonna have some kind of a forbidden romance develop with this boy who works for the printer. That would be an interesting direction, not something that we see in the books, but something that I think could be pretty interesting for the show. And then maybe one of the saddest moments I just really feel for Penelope is Colin has finally come back from his travels in Europe, and they have a conversation where he talks about how he used his trip to get to know himself better and he's sworn off women, and she kind of says, well, what about me? I'm a woman. And he was like, you're Pen. You don't count. You're my friend. And she's like, oh, yeah, I'm so glad to know that you consider me a friend, when truly she's heartbroken. So he is completely clueless that Penelope has feelings for him, even though they sometimes have these looks. I am really interested, and I don't think it's going to happen in this season. I think Penelope and Colin are going to probably get their own season at some point in the future, but I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with the show for making that happen. While I really loved most things about their book in the Bridgerton series, one thing that I wasn't a huge fan of is that the catalyst for him finally noticing her is that she's lost a bunch of weight, and I really hope they don't do that with the show. I think that would be so unfortunate. And while that's not while he falls in love with her, it is the thing that makes him finally take notice of her and realize, oh, Penelope, I really like her, and maybe I could even love her. And so he does fall for her as a person, but I don't like that that is the thing. So I'm kind of hoping that when we get to that season of Bridgerton that we're gonna get something more along the lines of maybe Penelope having a makeover, maybe when it's finally revealed that she's Lady Whistledown, or if she somehow ends up using more of her money and gets a new wardrobe and, you know, in some ways has like a makeover that makes him take notice of her, or that she has a relationship with somebody else and he realizes he's jealous. Like, both of those would be great directions to go, but I think it would be such a shame to lose the amazing plus size representation that we are getting on this show, because that is not a thing you see very often. And I am so here for seeing a fat character find love in this way. So I really, really hope that that is not the direction that that the show decides to take. What else can I say about this episode? I'm continuing to find Kate and Sharma really interesting. I'm sort of waiting for Anthony to finally realize that he is into Kate. I'm excited to see the sparks as that relationship develops into a more romantic one, and I'm not sure at what point in the season we're gonna get that. We've had a couple other references to their upbringing in India, that she's from Bombay and she misses it, especially at tea time. So they are like subtly weaving it in. It's not very heavy-handed. There's not a ton of it. Whether people are going to think this is the kind of representation they want, I don't know. But like I said earlier, the writers are clearly making some kind of an effort to make that happen. It is also kind of funny to see Lady Featherington like lose her shit over the new Lord Featherington bringing all his American like antlers and guns into the house, taking over her bedchambers, courting what's her name, the like awful blonde girl that everybody hates, and she's just like losing control of everything and slowly breaking down. So that's been kind of interesting to see. So yeah, overall loved episode 2, continuing to thoroughly enjoy the show and the direction that it's taking things, and I will be back with my thoughts on episode 3. Oh man. All right, I finished episode 3. This one made me cry twice. So it was definitely more of an emotional roller coaster than the other 2 episodes. And obviously a lot of it is because this one includes flashbacks. We got to see what happened when Antony's father died, and oh, gosh, it did. It made me cry. I've got to say, the actress playing Lady Bridgerton, her performance was incredible in terms of showing grief after the loss of her husband and in childbirth and depression from that grief. Just like excellently done. And I think the placement of this in episode 3 is also really smart. They did a really good job of picking where to put it. In the book, all of this information comes at the beginning. So at the very beginning of the story, we find out about how Antony, when he was like 15 or 16, was the one with his father when his father died of a heart attack related to a bee sting, and just how traumatic that was for him and how that led to him not wanting to find love and give that kind of grief to someone. One thing that's a little ridiculous in the book, I think that they changed in the show, probably for the better, is that Antony is convinced that he won't live past like 34 or however old his dad was when he died, because his dad was the most amazing man of all time and he can't imagine surpassing his dad. So not only does he not want to cause pain to a woman that he loves or who might love him, but he is certain that he's gonna die before his father did, which is, you know, like kind of illogical and a little silly. They didn't put that part in the show, which I think is probably for the best, but you get so much more depth of understanding the characterization and the motives behind who Antony is and the choices that he's making. You come to love him more as a character and understand where he's coming from and why he's making these decisions. And I think it's done in a really powerful way. What's interesting though is that at such a young age, you see these heavy pressures being put on him very quickly to be Viscount, where he has to take on everything from the moment his father dies and is dealing with a grieving mother and the trauma that that created for him, where he didn't have space to grieve the way that he needed to. And, you know, obviously also was hurt to see his mother in so much pain and didn't want to be the cause of that in someone else. So we really get all of that fully unpacked in episode 3. And I just think the way that that is done is really excellent. Again, like the acting in these scenes, I think was really incredible. But a lot of other things happened in this episode as well. And so it was an interesting episode because there was so much emotion. There were moments of grief and crying. There were moments of laughter. There were moments of passion. And it's just this excellently paced, crafted episode, in my opinion, that gives you so much feeling and emotion, and finally begins to set the stage for what is going to become a romance between Kate and Antony. This is also the episode that I know everybody has been waiting for, the iconic Pall Mall game. If you have read the books, you are aware this is one of the iconic scenes in the book and is hilarious. The family is incredibly competitive, especially Antony, and he hates to lose, and Kate is like just as competitive as he is. And what I think is interesting is that this is the point at which Daphne, who is coming to their country home to visit with her baby, meets the Sharma sisters for the first time, and almost from moment one mistakes them and assumes that Kate is her sister and is the girl that her brother is interested in pursuing. And, you know, a lot of it is because clearly Daphne is very perceptive. she can totally see the fact that, like, okay, I know you say that you want this sister, but I see the chemistry that you have with the other one. Are you sure about this? And he's just like, yeah, of course, even though you can tell he's trying to convince himself as much as anyone. And it's not that Edwina isn't sweet and pretty and a great person and someone that he can easily have conversations with. All of that is true, but there's just no real passion there, at least on his end. It is a little sad because there's a moment where everyone thinks he's going to propose and he doesn't, and her heart is kind of hurt in this process. Now, what I did find to be entertaining is that while Daphne sees where the chemistry really lies, Lady Danbury and Lady Bridgerton, who are conspiring to try to push Edwina and Antony together, totally miss it. They're hilarious, sneaking around, listening at doors, listening to conversations, and thinking that they know that Antony is maybe falling for her, when in reality, we kind of know as the listener that he's not. He's just sort of saying it. And all of that comes to full fruition at the end of the episode when Kate gets stung by a bee. Antony freaks out, starts having like a panic attack, and in her trying to calm him down, they come really close to kissing and then run away from each other and are both like, oh my God, what the hell, what did I just do? And so this is the moment where we're finally seeing, oh shit, there is chemistry here. This isn't just, I don't like you. This isn't just, I don't like what you've done to my sister or whatever. This is like, there's something there between us. And I'm very excited to see where that tension is going to take us in the next episode. Because you know, right, that Kate is going to feel horrible and completely guilty about what this means for her relationship with her sister when she knows her sister is kind of falling for this guy. How is all of that going to play out? And Antony is going to be freaking out because he's like, God, no, I can't do the emotions. I don't want to hurt anybody. I cannot fall in love. This can't be happening right now. But like, if you're falling for a girl and trying to marry her sister, like that's gonna create some problems, right? All of that was great. There's also this like random subplot where the Bridgerton brother, whose name I can never remember. Why is he the one that I can't remember? I could just look it up. I'm gonna look it up. Hold on. Benedict. Why can I never remember Benedict's name? So Benedict has been exploring his artistic side. He has applied to go to school for art, which he's excited about. I don't think that the going to school for art thing is in the books either, so I think that's an interesting choice. I'm curious to see where that takes us. But the day that he's freaking out waiting for a response to see if he got in, Colin convinces him to try some of the special tea that is clearly some kind of a drug. We don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like opium or if it's something else, but Benedict ends up taking way too much of it, and so he is completely loopy the whole rest of the day, which is like random but kind of funny. And you know, like people definitely took drugs back then, so that was a thing. Meanwhile, back in London, we have some other interesting things happening. Lady Featherington is thinking, okay, maybe if I can convince the new Lord Featherington to marry my daughter, because they're like fifth cousins or something, then she'll be more malleable and I'll be able to control the household. So that's what she's trying to do. It is not going well for her. So like, good luck with that. He seems pretty entranced with Miss Cowper, who is the worst, but he doesn't know that. And then Penelope, which I forgot to mention this, but at the end of episode 2, she is seen in a market in like the poor side of town wearing a maid's outfit while she's running things for her business side of things. But she is seen by the modiste, Miss Delacroix. And so by the end of this episode, they're maybe gonna become collaborators, which is interesting. Also, I just really like Miss Delacroix. I think she's such an interesting character. I like that we have this view of women who were able to create businesses for themselves, who were independent. It was a difficult life to live, but it was one that women had during this time. A couple other things that I wanted to make mention of is there's a moment where we see Kate brewing chai tea. She doesn't mention that it's chai, but we see the tea that she's brewing and she's enjoying it. So that I thought was just kind of cool that she's taking this moment to herself. But in the scene where she's brewing the chai, she ends up having a chat with Eloise, which was really interesting to see the two of them converse, where Eloise is like, hey, you're a spinster. You seem pretty happy, right? Because like Eloise does not want to get married, because for her, she wants freedom. She wants to be able to explore the world and do things, and she resents the fact that as a woman, she has a lot less freedom than her brothers do. And that is an ongoing theme throughout the show, which I think is interesting. Lastly, I am just continuing to love the detail of a lot of these costumes. One thing I noticed in this episode, which I thought was fun, is Benedict is wearing this waistcoat that has these pretty little like tulips or something embroidered on it. I took a screenshot, so I'll show you a picture of it, but I just saw it and I was like, that is a lovely waistcoat. I just love it. I love the detail of the different things that they'll wear in different circumstances, daytime versus nighttime. The level of detail that's going into the costuming, even for the men, is really fun to see. And, you know, that's not something that you always get. I feel like men, because they don't have these elaborate gowns in historical pieces, sometimes have a little bit more bland costumes. And so it's been kind of fun to see that stuff happening. Those are my thoughts on episode 3. I'm having such a good time watching this show. I'm really, really enjoying it. It is like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I probably need a break. I know there are people who are watching it all back to back, and I don't know if I can do that. So I'm gonna try to finish it by the end of the weekend. Today is Friday, and get this vlog up for you all, but I need a break before I watch some more. I will be back once I've watched episode 4. Okay, so I just finished watching episode 4. A lot happened. I have a lot to say about it. But before I dive into that, heads up that I'm realizing this footage is getting kind of lengthy, so I'm gonna break this video up into 2 pieces. Part 1 will be talking about episodes 1 through 4, and then I will do a separate video talking about episodes 5 through 8. So I will be back very soon with part 2, but for the purposes of this video, I'm just gonna cover episodes 1 through 4. All right, so a lot of this episode was about building on that tension between Kate and Anthony, and Edwina pushing them together, not realizing they have feelings for each other, but just thinking that if they spend more time together, they'll start to like each other better, right? So we have the hunting trip where Kate is a great shot, but he like puts his arm around her to help her hold the rifle. There's like a moment there. I've got to say, this episode has all of the like passionate glances and like brushing touches you could want. Jane Austen fans, your hearts will be aflutter. It's so good. It's so much like tension and passion. It's great. And I'll say this too, for people who thought that season 1 was too erotic, this season you might get on a lot better with, because at least so far there's not even been kisses, although we got a near kiss in this episode. But the romance is really good. So at the ball, Kate and Anthony dance together. That's a whole thing. Then they're together talking. They almost kiss, and then Daphne walks in on them. And she has a talk with Anthony. He realizes he's falling in love with Kate, and then therefore decides to propose to Edwina because God forbid he actually love the woman he marries. So now we're in the situation where Edwina thinks her sister just hates him or doesn't like him, has no idea that she has feelings for him. She's accepted his proposal. Like, this is a recipe for disaster. Somebody is going to be heartbroken because clearly this thing with Anthony and Edwina is not going to work long term, and somebody's going to get hurt in the process. It is interesting because while it does certainly amp up the drama and amp up the tension from what's in the book, things never get this far in the book, and Edwina in the book never really has feelings for him. She's interested, but she isn't falling for him. So it doesn't have this same kind of sister dynamic where there's like potential betrayal. That doesn't exist in the book in the way that it does in the show. You know, on screen, I get why maybe they made that choice, but it does mean there's going to be some hard choices ahead. Somebody is going to get really hurt by whatever happens. There are some interesting moments, though, that make me think Edwina doesn't really know what she's getting into, because Anthony is on his best behavior with her. She's quiet and nice and gentle, and there's a moment where she's spending time with Daphne and Lady Bridgerton, and they ask her what she wants in a marriage, etc., and she says, you know, gentle and kind and even-tempered and somebody like your brother. And Daphne kind of laughs and she's like, even-tempered? And she's like, oh, wouldn't you describe him as even-tempered? And Daphne's like, no. So clearly there's a lot more to Antony than what Edwina is seeing. He's probably not really what she wants, but it's going to be a hard road for her to get to that realization. And him and Kate both are really struggling with accepting the fact that they don't just hate each other, but they have feelings for each other. And I'm kind of living for it. I'm living for the tension between the two of them. It's great. Meanwhile, we have some other interesting side plots happening. Colin decides to go visit the woman he was in love with, Miss Marina Thompson, now Lady Crane. And I didn't pick up on this when I watched season 1, but maybe now that I've read farther in the series, I noticed it. She is married to Sir Philip from one of the later books in the series, and she gave birth to twins, right? So she's married to this guy who's really into plants, the same Sir Philip from To Sir Philip with Love, and she's the one who had twins. Now, spoilers for To Sir Philip with Love, but I want to talk a little bit about what this might mean for the future of the show and questions that I have about whether they might do things differently. I don't really know. I'm curious to see. So in the book version, what happens is that Eloise turns down all of her suitors for years until she's a spinster and like 30 or something, or close to 30. And, you know, that tracks with what we're seeing in this season of Eloise not being interested in suitors, not being interested in being out at parties and balls and things like that, and really being interested in feminist theory. That all kind of tracks. But in the books, years down the road, once she's considered a spinster, she ends up exchanging letters with Sir Philip, and then through their correspondence, she develops an attachment to him and goes to visit him, and they end up getting married. And he has twin children who are then like 10 or so, or 8 or 10, something like that. So it makes me wonder, are they setting us up for the same thing to happen? His first wife had died by suicide because she had major mental health issues like depression. I didn't necessarily like how the mental health was handled in the book, but it makes me wonder because Marina is like okay, but not necessarily happy. Is she gonna have more issues? In the book, it was that she had more postpartum depression and wasn't really connected to her kids. That doesn't seem to be the case for Marina in this, but I am wondering, are we being set up for future seasons in Bridgerton where that's what's gonna happen? Marina is somehow going to die, and then Eloise, as an older woman, will marry Sir Philip, who Marina doesn't seem to really care much for? Or are they going to take Eloise's character a different route? I don't know. I'm not sure what the show is going to do because they seem to be making some level of changes, but I am curious to see what happens. I hadn't quite picked up on that connection yet. One thing is that when he gets back, Colin talks to Penelope and she says, well, I hope maybe seeing Marina will be enough to help you leave that in the past and move on and not be giving up women. And he kind of suggests that maybe Lady Whistledown is at fault for where Marina ended up because of the gossip she wrote. And as we know, Penelope is Lady Whistledown, so that could create some difficulties. It is interesting though that when Marina sort of says, dude, wake up, I am not your future, I have moved on, you need to move on too, he's kind of like, wow, okay. And she's like, look, you need to go back. You have so many other people who care about you and love you. And he was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, your family, you have Penelope. And he's like, Penelope? So clearly he's completely unaware of anything to do with Penelope at this point, and I think things are gonna get worse before they get better. So the last major plot thread in this episode is following this whole issue with Lady Featherington and the new Lord Featherington, and she decides that the solution to all of their problems is to entrap Lord Featherington into marriage with her daughter. And so she facilitates that by sending them out to the orangery during the ball alone and then bringing people out so they're caught in a compromising position, not really compromising, just like unchaperoned together. But the twist is, right, that he's like, yeah, I mean, I'll marry her, but this isn't going to be good because I'm penniless. Those mines I've been talking about, they're completely worthless. And the only way to actually support all of us was for me to marry a woman with money, like Miss Cowper, who everybody hates, but she has a lot of money. She has a big dowry. And so Lady Featherington is yet again getting herself into trouble, making dumb choices. So this episode was really interesting. The passion between Kate and Antony was top notch. This gets like 5 stars for all the longing glances and like near embraces, near kisses, that part of it is really fantastic. And then we're setting up a lot of drama that I think is going to create problems in future episodes and maybe even in future seasons. So I'm really curious to see where this is going to take us. That is halfway through season 2. Those are all of my spoilery thoughts on the first 4 episodes. So far, I'm loving it. Honestly, I am having a blast watching the show. I really like the direction that they decided to take. I like the fact that season 1 was more erotic. I like the fact that they really went there when that was a lot of how the book was. But I'm also loving this more Jane Austen passionate longing thing that they're doing in season 2. And you know, I do wonder a little bit if part of it has to do with the actors. I think they're doing a fantastic job of having chemistry between the two of them, but I wonder if they have different feelings about doing lots of sex scenes. Maybe we do have a hero who in real life is a gay man, but you know, actors act, and so I'm sure they could do it. I just wonder if like some of those things behind the scenes played a role, or if they wanted to scale back to make it more accessible to more people. I don't really know what the thinking on it was, but I'm loving the execution regardless and loving the way they're doing it. So I will be back in another video to give you all my thoughts on the second half of season 2. But so far, I am a fan. I am enjoying this even more than I enjoyed season 1, and looking forward to continuing on. Probably tomorrow. I'm going to take a break for the rest of the evening. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on anything I talked about, my thoughts about spoilers, ideas you guys have. Try to keep it spoiler free for the second half of the season in the comments down below for folks who haven't watched it yet, but feel free to comment about the first 4 episodes. If you guys like this video, it does help if you give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.